Now into the second year of a Trump presidency, never-Trumpers, they are not going away. And some of these hardcore conservatives are even beginning to root for Democrats come November. Joining us now, the host of MediaBuzz and author of the new book, Media Madness, Donald Trump, the Press, and the War Over the Truth, Howard Kurtz. Thanks for joining us. There has been a loud call from people like George Will to vote Democrat, but it would seem to me that the current Republican Party has cut these never-Trumpers and people like George Will off. Or are Republicans listening to people like George Will?
Well, it's a mutual divorce, I suppose. George Will, Max Boot, a columnist, now works at CNN, Steve Schmidt, who ran John McCain's 2008 campaign. They've all been harshly critical of President Trump. They think he's kind of hijacked the party from their vision of conservatism, and that's fine. But now they're taking this next step, saying, actually, the Democrats should take over Congress to act as a check on Trump, go out and vote Democratic, and it's kind of hard for me to fully grasp because they've spent their whole careers warning against the Democrats, opposing the Democrats as a party of big government, big spending, weak foreign policy, and the like. Well,
they refer to it as the party of Trump. I want to read you what George Will actually said. In today's GOP, which is the president's plaything, he is the mainstream, so to vote against his party's cowering congressional caucuses is to affirm the nation's honor while quarantining him. I mean, George Will is no lightweight. When George Will is essentially calling President Trump a dangerous person, shouldn't middle-of-the-road Republicans be listening?
Well, whether they should or they shouldn't, the polls show pretty clearly. I mean, 90% of Republicans, according to a bunch of recent polls, are fully supporting President Trump. So I do have the feeling that, you know, he has redefined the Republican Party, and it's no longer the party that people like Will were comfortable with. I have a problem with some of the overheated rhetoric, particularly this Washington Post column the other day by Max Boot, in which he said the Republican Party is now a white nationalist party with a conservative fringe, and he even compared it to post-war Germany and Japan, saying we have to destroy it so we can rebuild it. Now, again, these are smart guys who I've respected for years, but I think that what I call Trump trauma, the way in which they absolutely detest Donald Trump, has really colored the language that they use and the way they talk about this.
But is there criticism of the president and the administration misguided? I mean, the president does have a liberty with the truth, for lack of a better term, and he does lie. He doesn't say the truth sometimes. And these men are concerned because they also say that they would point to history that when you get dictatorships and fascism, it's incremental and it starts with little lies which become big lies.
I think the president's veracity is not the main issue for most of these people. I've read and listened to them during the Trump presidency. I think it's that they completely and totally disagree with Donald Trump on immigration, on free trade, on issues like that, on NATO, the NATO alliance, on dealing with Putin. They feel like, you know, they believe what they believed all along, and he has taken the GOP in a different direction. Now, I'm not saying that this is the reason, but I can't help but notice with these folks and a few others that they're getting a lot of favorable publicity. Some of them are getting big
from the media that used to
contracts.
criticize them. They're now the new darlings. Well, let's talk about the Russia trip real quick. Okay. I mean, we had U.S. senators going to Russia. Around the same time, a bipartisan report from the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee said that Vladimir Putin did order his intelligence services to interfere with our election. I grew up in the era where Russia was an enemy. And I think these conservative Republicans we're talking about still see Russia as an enemy. What has changed that they're not an enemy? Seems to me that these conservative Republicans like George Will and Mr. Boot may be onto something.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Kim Jong-un. I mean, if a Democratic president was making nice with Vladimir Putin or meeting with the dictator of North Korea, a lot of these Republican lawmakers would be going bonkers because it's President Trump. They are falling into line. And that's not to say that we can't have a constructive relationship with Russia, but it is hard. And this is really going to come home in terms of the media coverage when the president meets with Putin one-on-one after the NATO meeting. Hard for many to understand why the president isn't a little tougher on Russia, particularly on this question, which have been proven beyond a doubt, I think, of meddling in the 2016 election.
Howard Kurtz, thank you for joining us. And remember, you can watch Howie on MediaBuzz on the Fox News channel at 11 a.m. Eastern Time every Sunday.